You want to know what really keeps an airline alive. It's not the polished ads with smiling flight attendants or the gleaming aircraft parked like trophies under perfect lighting. It's not the executives shaking hands in glass offices, pretending they understand the machine they inherited. The real heartbeat of a mid-size airline is hidden in a windowless operations center that smells like burnt coffee, overheated servers, and quiet panic. That's where I lived, but the truth is, no one really understood what I was doing. Before I tell you how one careless firing brought an entire airline to its knees, hit that like button, because the most shocking part is still ahead. And I'm curious too. Where are you watching from? And how old are you? About myself. My name is Angela Hughes, and for 11 years, I was the operations lead at Skybridge Air. Fancy title, meaningless glamour. In reality, I was the person standing between controlled chaos and total collapse. My job was simple in theory: make sure hundreds of flights, thousands of passengers, and dozens of unpredictable variables somehow aligned into something resembling order. In practice, it meant living in a constant state of high-stakes problem-solving where one mistake could ripple across the entire country. We ran everything through a system called Airl. Sounds modern. Right? It wasn't. It was a fragile, stitched-together relic from the early 2000s layers of outdated code patched over older mistakes, barely holding together under pressure. Most people saw dashboards and pretty visuals. I saw the cracks underneath. I knew which commands could stabilize a failing route, which sequences could prevent a cascade of delays, and which invisible switches could bring the entire system to its knees, because I built half of those workarounds myself. At 4 a.m., while the world slept, I sat in front of glowing monitors, rerouting flights around storms, fixing crew conflicts before they escalated, and manually correcting errors the system was too outdated to handle. Planes didn't fly because of fuel or technology. They flew because I refused to let them fall apart. Hold on for a second. I want to be clear about something. This is a fictional story, shaped and enhanced with a touch of AI to make it more engaging, more emotional, and to bring out deeper, more meaningful lessons. So don't just listen to it, feel it, reflect on it, and take from it what resonates with you. Now, let's continue. By 5:10 a.m., the illusion of a normal day was already cracking. A storm system was crawling up the East Coast, dragging delays behind it like a chain. Charlotte was backing up. Boston ground crews were running late, and somewhere in the system logs, a quiet warning light blinked routing instability on one of the core servers. I didn't panic. I never did. Angela, we've got a lag on Airl. Ryan called out from 2 desks over, his voice tight. I see it, I said, already typing. Most people in that room relied on the interface, the neat dashboards, the color-coded alerts. I went straight into the raw layer, lines of code, timestamps, routing tables. That's where the truth lived. Within seconds, I recognized the pattern. A handshake delay between the scheduling module and crew assignments. Old bug, ugly one. Hold departures in Newark for 3 minutes. I said, don't let the system autocorrect. That'll stack the gates. Ryan warned. Only if I'm wrong. I wasn't. My fingers moved faster than thought, bypassing the automated protocol and patching the delay manually. At the same time, I rerouted 2 incoming flights away from the storm front and reassigned a pilot crew that had just timed out due to federal limits. Every move had consequences. Every second mattered. The warning light flickered. Then it went green. Around me, the room exhaled without realizing it had been holding its breath. Nice catch, someone muttered. I didn't respond. I was already on to the next problem. A delayed fuel truck in Dallas, a baggage routing error in Phoenix, a flight in Chicago missing a gate assignment because 2 systems disagreed on reality. People think airlines run on schedules. They don't. They run on constant correction, on invisible decisions made in seconds by people who know exactly what will break before it does. And that morning, like every morning before it, Skybridge Air stayed in the sky, because I was there to hold it together. The first sign that something was about to go very wrong didn't come from a system alert. It came from the door. At exactly 9 a.m., the operations center door swung open. That alone was unusual. Nobody walked in here unless something was on fire or someone was about to lose their job. The room shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence, and even the hum of the servers seemed to fade for a second. I turned in my chair. Standing there like they had just stepped out of a corporate lifestyle commercial were Ethan Caldwell and his fiancée, Lila Monroe. Ethan was the CEO's son. Early 30s. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. Zero understanding of how anything actually worked. He had just returned from what the company newsletter called a global strategy sabbatical, which I suspected involved beaches, cocktails, and very little strategy. Now he had a new title that sounded important and meant nothing: Chief Innovation Officer. Lila stood next to him, clutching a tablet like it was a weapon. Former influencer turned operations consultant. According to HR, everything about her was polished, curated, and completely disconnected from reality. "Angela," Ethan said, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just the person we wanted." That sentence alone made my stomach tighten. "To what do I owe the visit?" I asked, not bothering to stand. "We're here to observe," Lila chimed in, her voice light and rehearsed. "We want to understand the flow, the energy, the decision-making process. There's a lot of opportunity to optimize. I hated that word. Behind me. A warning ping flashed briefly on one of the monitors. I didn't turn around. Not yet. "Well," I said calmly, "right now, I'm optimizing a reroute around a storm system so we don't stack 20 flights over Atlanta. So feel free to watch. Just don't touch anything." Ethan laughed softly. Stepping closer to my station, his eyes scanned the screens, lingering on the raw data panels. "This all looks a bit outdated," he said. "We're thinking of modernizing, streamlining the process, making it more accessible." Accessible. He reached a hand toward the keyboard. "Don't," I said sharply. He paused, surprised. "It's just data," he replied. "No," I said, meeting his gaze. "It's a live system. You touch the wrong thing. You don't just move numbers. You delay flights, misroute crews, strand passengers." For a brief second, the smile slipped. Then it came back. Tighter this time. "We have a meeting at noon," Ethan said. "Boardroom. We'd like your input on the future of operations." It didn't sound like a request. As they turned and walked out, the tension they left behind hung heavier than any storm system on my screen. And for the first time that day, I wasn't thinking about weather delays or system errors. I was thinking about them. The boardroom felt nothing like the operations center, up here. Everything was glass, polished wood, and quiet confidence. You could look down through the windows and see the hangar floor. Mechanics moving like ants beneath the illusion of control. It was a different world entirely, up here. Decisions were clean, down there. Consequences were not. Ethan sat at the head of the table like he had been born into that chair. Lila was beside him, already connecting her tablet to the screen. A few department heads filled the remaining seats, their expressions cautious. Calculating. "Let's get started," Ethan said, not looking at me as I walked in. "We've been reviewing operational efficiency, and we think it's time for a structural shift." The lights dimmed. A presentation lit up the wall. The first slide read, "Reimagining Operations." I almost smiled. "We believe the current system is too reactive," Lila began, pacing slowly. "You're constantly responding to problems instead of preventing them. Our goal is to create a proactive, streamlined model using predictive analytics and simplified workflows." "Predictive analytics," I said from my seat. "You mean like weather tracking and load forecasting, because we already do that." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Lila clicked to the next slide. A map of one of our busiest routes appeared. For example, "We've identified redundant short-haul flights that could be consolidated," she said. "Fewer flights, larger aircraft, cleaner scheduling." I leaned forward, feeling that familiar pressure building in my chest. "You can't consolidate those routes," I said. "The secondary airports can't handle larger aircraft. You'll force reroutes to main hubs, increase fees, and lose commuter traffic. That's a net loss." Silence. Lila blinked, then glanced at Ethan. "That's one perspective," she replied. "It's not a perspective," I said. "It's how the system works." Ethan finally looked at me. "We're not here to debate every detail," he said. "We're here to evolve. The current model relies too heavily on specialized knowledge." Specialized knowledge? I understood then. "This isn't about efficiency," I said quietly. "It's about control." Ethan's expression hardened. "We're implementing a new integrated dashboard," he continued. "It will simplify operations so anyone can manage the system without relying on individual operators." Anyone. In that moment, I realized they weren't trying to improve the system. They were trying to replace the people who understood it, and they had already decided I was one of them. The changes didn't come all at once. They started quietly, almost politely. A memo here, a restructuring announcement there. Words like optimization, efficiency, and modernization were suddenly everywhere. On emails, in meetings, printed on posters like motivational slogans. Then people started disappearing. First was Daniel from maintenance scheduling. 15 years of experience. Knew inventory flows better than any database. Gone in a single afternoon. Replaced by a new automated ordering system that looked impressive on screen and immediately started making mistakes. Within 2 days. It had ordered dozens of non-essential components while critical parts ran low. Next, they cut the overnight support team, low activity hours. Ethan had said, except cargo flights ran through the night. International routing updates happened in those hours. Without that team, problems didn't get solved, they just waited until morning, stacking into something bigger by the end of the week. The operations center felt different. Quieter. Not calm quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from people being afraid to speak. Conversations stopped when management walked by. Screens were watched more carefully. Mistakes were hidden instead of fixed. Lila started showing up at my station regularly, not to learn, to observe. She would sit beside me, scrolling through her tablet, occasionally glancing at the screens. "Why are there so many codes?" she asked once. "Wouldn't it be easier to just color everything green for good? Red for bad?" I didn't look at her. "The codes tell us why something is wrong." I said, "Color doesn't fix anything." She sighed, like I was the difficult one. "You really need to work on your mindset." "Angela, it's very resistant." Resistant? That word stayed with me, because what they called resistance, I called reality. And what they were building wasn't a better system. It was a slower collapse, disguised as progress. If you think Ethan was right to cut experienced staff and replace them with systems he didn't fully understand, comment support. But if you believe firing the very people who keep everything running was a reckless mistake, right, I oppose. Because sometimes, what looks like confidence is actually ignorance in disguise. That was the moment I stopped arguing. Not because I agreed with them, not because I was tired, but because I finally understood something they didn't. You don't stop a system from collapsing by shouting at the people pushing it off the edge. You step back and let gravity do the rest. So I changed. In meetings, I nodded. When Ethan proposed unrealistic turnaround times, I didn't challenge him. When Lila talked about simplifying workflows, I agreed with a calm smile. It confused them. They thought I was adapting. I wasn't. I was preparing. Over the years, I had built dozens of custom scripts to keep AeroCore functioning. Quiet fixes, hidden bridges between outdated modules, workarounds that prevented small glitches from turning into system-wide failures. None of them were officially documented. Most of them weren't even known outside my terminal. Those scripts were the reason everything still worked, and I knew exactly where they lived. for 3 days straight. I stayed late, long after the others left. After the lights dimmed and the noise faded into the steady hum of servers, I reorganized everything. I didn't delete a single line of code. That would have been sabotage. I centralized it. Every custom protocol, every critical patch, every invisible support layer, I moved them into a secured directory tied directly to my user credentials, my access, my authorization, my presence, if I was logged in. The system ran smoothly. If I wasn't, it didn't. It was clean, logical, technically compliant with internal policy. Personal workflow tools remained tied to the employee who created them. That rule had existed for years. Nobody paid attention to it. Until now. I even left a paper trail, buried documentation, signed agreements. Just enough to make everything legally untouchable. They thought they were removing a person. They didn't realize they were removing the foundation, and all that was left was for them to make it official. The email came late Friday afternoon. No subject line, just a calendar invite from HR, 3 p.m. Mandatory. I didn't need more details. I already knew. I looked around the operations center one last time. The screens, the low hum of machines, the people pretending everything was still normal. For 11 years. This place had been my world. Now it felt like a building I had already left. Even though I was still standing in it, I grabbed my bag, took my ID badge, and walked out without saying much. The HR office was exactly what you'd expect. Beige walls, artificial lighting, and that faint smell of something sterile trying to hide discomfort. Ethan was already there, sitting across the table like he owned the moment. Lila sat beside him, her expression carefully arranged into something that resembled sympathy. "Angela," Ethan said, folding his hands, "we've reviewed your role within the new structure." "I didn't sit down. Let me guess," I replied. "I'm not aligned with the vision." Lila nodded slightly. "We need people who are adaptable, forward-thinking, positive energy." There it was. Ethan leaned forward. "Your position is being terminated, effective immediately." The words landed, and nothing happened. No anger, no shock, just confirmation. HR slid a folder toward me. Severance package, 2 weeks, 11 years reduced to paper and signatures. I didn't touch it. Instead, I reached into my pocket and placed my ID badge on the table. The plastic hit the surface with a soft, final sound. "Keep it," I said. "I won't be signing anything." Ethan frowned. "That's not how this works." "It is for me." I turned toward the door, then paused. "Oh, one more thing," I added, glancing back. "The system refresh cycle runs every 4 hours. Next one soon." Ethan looked confused, so I gave a small, almost polite smile. "So make sure you're logged in when it happens." I walked out before they could ask anything else. By the time I stepped into the elevator, I pulled out my phone, opened the admin panel, and pressed one button. Log out. The system didn't crash immediately, but the countdown had already begun. I didn't go home. Instead, I walked into a small bar not far from the airport, the kind of place where nobody asks questions and everyone looks like they've just survived something. I ordered a drink, sat down, and opened a flight tracking app on my phone. I didn't need internal access anymore. I just needed to watch. At 3:30 p.m., right on schedule. The system refreshed for a few seconds. Nothing happened. Then the first delay appeared. One flight in Miami suddenly lost its departure time, then another in Boston, then Chicago. Small glitches at first. Easy to ignore if you didn't know what they meant. But I did. Back in the operations center, they would be refreshing screens. Assuming it was just a lag, someone would try to reload the data. The system would reach for the scripts that no longer existed, and find nothing. At 3:45, delays started stacking. Flights lost gate assignments. Crew schedules began overlapping. 2 aircraft were routed to the same gate in Dallas. That's when confusion turns into panic. My phone buzzed. Messages, calls. I ignored them. By 4 p.m., the system wasn't just glitching anymore, it was failing. Without the routing logic I had built, Airl defaulted to outdated configurations. It didn't recognize updated terminals. It ignored construction changes. It started assigning planes to positions that physically didn't exist. On the ground, that meant chaos. In the air, that meant risk. The FAA doesn't wait for explanations. They saw inconsistent tracking data, conflicting assignments, and a loss of operational control. So they issued a ground stop. Everything froze. Departures halted. Incoming flights diverted. Thousands of passengers stranded within minutes. Skybridge Air wasn't delayed. It was paralyzed and sitting there, watching the map slowly fill with red markers. I realized something strange. For the first time in 11 years, none of it was my problem anymore. The call started around 5:30. First Ethan, then Lila, then numbers I didn't recognize. I let all of them ring. Then, one name appeared on the screen that made me pause. Richard Caldwell, the founder, Ethan's father, the man who actually built Skybridge Air from nothing. I answered, "Angela." His voice came through, strained and heavier than I'd ever heard it. "We have a situation." I almost laughed. "I've noticed," I said calmly. There was a pause, the kind that carries weight. "They told me what happened." He continued, "The system, the dependencies. We need you back, immediately, back, just like that." Ethan made a decision. I replied, "You approved it." "He made a mistake," Richard said. "Sharper now, one we can fix. Come in tonight, name your price." There it was, not an apology, a transaction. "I'm not interested," I said. Silence again. Then, quieter this time. "Angela, we're losing millions by the hour. Flights are grounded. The FAA is breathing down our necks. This company fired the person who kept it running. I finished for him." His breath caught slightly. "I'll remove Ethan from operations," he said quickly. "You'll report directly to me. Full control. Whatever you want, for a moment." I considered it. Then I remembered the meetings, the dismissals, the way they looked at me like I was replaceable. "It's too late." I said, "You're letting everything burn." He said, "No," I replied softly. "You did that the moment you let them light the match." I ended the call, and this time, I didn't look back. The next morning, I woke up later than I had in years. No alarms, no system alerts, just silence. I made real coffee, sat by the window, and opened my laptop. My inbox was overflowing messages from recruiters, competitors, people who suddenly understood my value. One name stood out, Daniel Reeves, head of operations at Aeronova Airlines, Skybridge's biggest rival. His message was simple. "We heard what happened. We'd like to talk." By noon, I was sitting across from him, reviewing an offer that was unreal. Triple my previous salary, full control over system architecture, no interference from executives who didn't understand the work. I didn't hesitate. Within a week, I was rebuilding something new, cleaner, stronger, smarter. Meanwhile, Skybridge Air didn't recover. 80% of their flights were canceled within days. Their stock dropped. Lawsuits followed. Within 6 months, the company was sold off in pieces. Ethan lost his position before the end of the week. Lila disappeared from operations entirely. And me, I finally had something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom, because in the end, they thought they were replacing a person. What they really did was remove the only thing holding everything together. I spent years proving my value through hard work, loyalty, and silence, thinking that would be enough. It wasn't. Through this story, I've drawn 3 lessons. First, competence is your strongest asset, but it only matters when people recognize it, so never let yourself be undervalued. Second, loyalty should never come at the cost of your self-worth. If you're not respected, it's not the right place for you. And third, sometimes walking away is not losing. It's the beginning of something far greater. Looking back, I didn't destroy anything. I simply stopped holding everything together for people who never appreciated it. Now, I want to ask you, which lesson left the strongest impression on you if this story made you think? Or reminded you of something in your own life? Take a moment to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who might need it too. Your support means more than you think. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice, and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly